Hello everyone, good to see you, welcome back. I'm Jerrel. I am a normal human being, I make video games for a living. This will be my analysis video of the new gameplay trailer that has been shown online for Dragon Quest III HD-2D Remake. And first off, I just want to say that I'm so glad to see all of the improvements in this gameplay video over the last trailer that we got. I want to go over some of the aspects that I really like, I really respect, and I will be approaching this analysis as a game developer. I make commercial video games and also free homebrew games as well for my audience and supporters. So I won't be approaching this as a fan, despite the fact that I am a fan of all these games. I'm approaching this from a game developer standpoint. So overall, what we see in this gameplay trailer is, well, it's not really a trailer, is it? It's more of a visual showcase. This is significantly more visually coherent and cohesive than the previous trailer, and there are many major improvements. I want to point those out, the things that I've noticed, and if you have happened to notice things that I miss in my video, please let me know in the comments section. So, first of all, I want to point out one of the biggest changes, and that is the camera position and the focal length has changed. It's totally different, which is something you can do in a 3D game, in a 3D environment, and adapt to. And there isn't that much you have to do to take that into account, really. And what I mean by that is the camera is now physically farther back from the scene, and it's zoomed in more. And previously, the previous trailer showed that the camera was actually quite close and it was zoomed in wide. Now the problem with that works fine if your game is all 3D, but this game uses 2D sprites for the characters and it was introducing some issues. Particularly the pixel density consistency was totally off. Characters in the foreground were significantly bigger than characters in the background, and it was resulting in some visual dissonance, and they have addressed that here using a number of visual techniques and approaches. So it's seen all throughout here. You know, I could pause at any point, you know, and you'll sort of see that characters that are in the foreground are not necessarily that much bigger than the characters in the background. They're more consistent in terms of their overall size and also their pixel density. This is very visually pleasing. It's actually kind of visually unpleasing to have the camera too close and wide. When we do portrait photography, we generally have the camera, the photographer, back and we zoom in, and that results in visual compression in terms of compressing features so they have a more consistent visual presentation to them. So that is something I really respect. That was a great decision, but it also results, having the camera farther back and zoomed in more, results in a look that's more similar to the old isometric 2D games. So that's a decision that I really respect. It's really great. One interesting side effect you can see of pulling the camera back and having a lower focal length, you know, zoomed in more, is as the character moves, you can actually see these particles that are closer to the camera. They move crazy fast. You can see that, whereas the particles closer to the player don't move as fast. And that's just going to happen. That's what happens when you zoom in and pull the camera back. So that's something that I can understand, I really respect. And I don't want to make like a good bad sandwich here. But there's like a decision here that they've done, the developers done, that I don't really understand. I've understood basically everything that I've seen here, you know, but one decision I don't understand is they've added this guy to the corner of the game, and I don't really understand why they've done it, because, you know, in the previous trailer they showed us a scene that, you know, the graphics didn't really blend in with the rest of the game, and I just kind of feel like, look, this guy's cool, right? He looks cool, he seems like a nice guy, he's really interested in the game, he's really engaged. He's kind of exciting to watch, you know, if you see his reactions, it's really exciting, but like his graphics don't necessarily blend in with a 2D pixel art style. And so I feel like, I mean, this is just my personal, you know, as a gamer, I'm really hoping that they have an option to turn off the corner guy because he does actually take up a fair amount of the screen. And for me personally, if I were to have a corner guy in my games, I would generally make the corner guy a little smaller. This is like a good eighth of the screen, I think. And it's, that I'm sure that the developers have their own reasoning for putting a corner guy there. But I think he does actually enhance the game. There are scenes here where, like, if something sad happens, you see the corner guy react. When something exciting happens, you see corner guy react. And I think that adds to it. That as a player, it lets me know what my reaction should be. So it's cool seeing a prompt. So I had to watch this video a few times, and I was a little confused by the corner guy. But after seeing his reactions, and it's like, oh wow, that's really cool. It's actually grown on me. So I actually kind of like the corner guy now. So something that the developers have done is that they've done a number of things to address the pixel density consistency issue. They had a major issue with the previous trailer that they showed us, and that was the characters were pixel sharp, and it resulted in pixel jittering. So even when characters were standing still, they would jitter. This is just a small visual glitch, which I'm sure they will address, but we'll just watch this. You can see the characters sort of flicker here. So if you keep an eye on these characters here, they sort of flicker a little bit. And that has to do with a turning animation. They're trying to walk down and left, and they're trying, the character control logic is trying to determine whether they should walk left or right, or whether they should face left or right, and they jitter a little bit. So that's quite easy to fix. You would just add a sort of buffer to the logic to where the character can't change direction that fast. You would just add, a couple milliseconds delay so that it can't jitter like that, so they can't snap back. So that's a different kind of, that's sort of animation flickering, or animation state, flickering. So back to my point though. I mean, I'm sure the developers can address that. That's not really a big deal. I have confidence that they'll do something about that. But previously, characters that were in the foreground were pixel sharp. Their pixels were huge, and then characters in the back, had smaller pixels. It was not coherent. But what they've done now is a huge improvement. What they've actually done is they slightly blur the sprites that are in the foreground and in the background. And also, as a result of having adjusted the camera, I've noticed the camera, of course, it's farther away, it zoomed in more. And the camera tends to be a little lower now. So instead of just being overhead and flat, there are certain scenes where it's actually more horizontal than vertical. And that shows more of the scene in an interesting way. And what they've done here is the depth of field. Depth of field is a visual photographic technique where you focus in on a target and the background and foreground are blurred out. This is the most competent use, even more so than their previous trailer. This is the most competent use of depth of field that I've seen in an HD 2D game. I would say the most incompetent use of it is the Octopath Traveler games. I'm not saying Octopath Traveler is a bad game. I'm saying their use of depth of field is absolutely incompetent. They don't have an understanding of what they're doing with it. This is the exact opposite, even more so than the previous trailer. This is the most competent use of depth of field. It is extremely well done. They display mastery and understanding of depth of field and how to use it effectively. So what they're doing is they've actually made the depth of field more active, which means it covers a broader range, but it's less powerful. So that means that there's a bit more in focus, but then there's even more that's blurred out, that's out of focus, but the amount of blurring is reduced. And so you can still tell what things are, and this still looks like a photographic scene, a cinematic scene, whereas in Octopath Traveler, they just cranked the settings up to maximum with no understanding of what they were doing. This is the total opposite. This is really fantastic, and that contributes to blending the pixel density consistency. Like if you have a look here, they're actually now using what looks to be a sort of texture filtering on the character sprites. I would call that, it's likely bilinear filtering, something like that, where previously it seemed that as if there was no filtering, it was totally pixel sharp, and that resulted in a number of visual issues. They've, in my eyes, as a developer, as an artist, they've absolutely addressed the issue. This is the absolute best that they could have done to address the pixel density inconsistency. It makes things like, the Final Fantasy 5 and 6 on Android, it makes those look utterly embarrassing, but on their own, they look embarrassing. And I am actually saying those are bad. Those are bad versions of Final Fantasy 5 and 6. On the mobile, they absolutely are bad versions. They are incompetently put together. So this is the opposite of that. I would say this is the opposite of incompetent. It's extremely well done. There's a lot of consideration here in terms of design and the visuals here. So something that actually makes that clear is at 640. I hope this doesn't sound like a rant video. At 641 here, the menu opens. If I am, and if we pause it there, you can actually see the menu sprites do not have any pixel filtering or bilinear filtering. They're actually pixel sharp, and you can see that in comparison. So this is what it looks like when there's no pixel filtering. It's quite sharp, and then you can see the characters in the environment now have pixel filtering, which is a great way to address the visual issues they had before. So that's great. I really respect that and appreciate their work towards making this more visually coherent. So something I really like is the use of dynamic lighting from the lantern. There's an example of that at 5:30 here. I think this is just great. You can see these are simulated shadows, of course, that are being cast from the lantern, but as the protagonist moves around, you can see the light being cast on the party members, and I think that's just great. Something to note, I believe there's no effect on that guy, as there would be a performance implication, a cost, if NPCs had to have that as well. I just want to have a look at that again. Like, we don't get enough look, and of course, this is one of my complaints with Corner Guy. He's cool. I like the Corner Guy, but he was in the way in that point. You know, like that. I kind of got jump scared by a guy that was camping. See, here's what's interesting though. You see, like, he isn't affected by the lantern until it's at a distance, which is kind of interesting, but he is affected by the lantern. But I'm not sure if his lighting is actually affected by the lantern. His lighting does seem to be influenced by the campfire, so I'm not sure if there's a priority on what is closer. So that's kind of interesting to me. But I do really like this effect. It's quite pleasant. I really like these the light shafts from the moon coming down there. Something I noticed is there's an overall soft haziness applied to the whole screen. Some people may not like that, but I actually quite like that. It makes it feel like a storybook. It's quite pleasant to look at. So that's very nice. Overall, you know, some people might say it's a little blurry. I have seen other videos where it's higher quality. There's less compression. Overall, I think it gives it a sort of a storybook look to it, and it's quite pleasant. I think it's used tastefully. It's used very well, and I suppose they're trying to soften the pixels and just get it to look a bit more smoother. But overall, it does improve the overall cohesion of the visuals, and I do really like that. Something I noticed in the battles here, if I check out my annotated timestamp here, something they've done is they've done significant work on the battle sprites. This was something that I addressed in my previous video, that they drew these sprites at a lower resolution, then they upscaled and filtered them, but the automated filtering did not do a good enough job, and they didn't seem to do enough touching up. So it looks like they've done more work on that, which is very nice to see. The stair stepping on the hair is gone, so they've likely gone in by hand with an artist, and they've done more work on the sprites, which is very nice. And again, I don't really understand the developers' thought process here, because Corner Guy is blocking off the character there. And I you know, to some people it may not bother them. To me, it does bother me a little bit not being able to see all my characters. But you know, I'm sure that's something you get used to from a gameplay standpoint. So it's probably, you know, it's probably just me nitpicking. And in my last video, I got people that were mad at me for saying negative things about Dragon Quest. So I'll try to be a bit more positive this time. And look, I think you could get used to Corner Guy. I think it's totally fine. So something I really like here is, I have an example at 128 here. This is interesting. The foreground geometry pops in and out. This is something we see in games all the time. This is such, you know, a common design philosophy here. But the implementation is interesting to me, because those pop in. They don't smoothly fade in and out. So I suspect they're using a level of detail system. So in game design, a level of detail system means that as an object, a 3D model gets farther from the camera, it can swap out to a lower level of detail, so it has less polygons on that model so that it has less of a performance cost. But also, instead of just doing that so you can have a lower performance cost, you can also just swap out to different models as you want. The way that it pops in, like it fades in smoothly and then it suddenly pops in. I'll let that play smoothly here. It's possible that at the very last step of that, they could be swapping to a solid model, because it pops in quite suddenly. So it's possible, or maybe just that's just the way that they've implemented. Maybe, you know, they aren't using a level of detail. But for me personally, I would have used a level of detail substitution, a kagebunshin, I suppose, if you would, because if you're drawing a model that has the potential to go transparent, there will always be a performance cost. Whether or not they are transparent, just having the ability to go transparent does cost performance. And so that's why I personally would have swapped into a solid model. Then I would use level of detail to swap in. I'm wondering if these pillars or the walls can go transparent as well. We don't really see examples of that. So but I think that's good use of that. I think that looks quite nice. But it's something as funny as that the top part actually pops in a little bit later than the railing here. So that tells me that these actually are two different meshes. These are two different objects. That's a different object from that because they are able to pop in. And that's partly why I suspect that they used a level of detail mechanism in order to swap those in. But it could be anything, you know, it could be absolutely anything. So that's all I wanted to discuss today. I absolutely respect and adore the way this looks. This is just fantastic. They've done such a great job, you know. I did notice one minor error here. It's interesting, and I mean, you could call it an error, and you could say it's just a design quirk. Is it 916? This is, you know, and I believe it's because the spells can affect, you know, the darkness of the skies or anything. But something here is we have this sort of simulated sense of atmospheric lighting, and the sky does not actually blend in to the atmospheric lighting. You see it's quite dark there, and then it gets even darker with the magic, and it does not blend, you know, with this simulated atmospheric lighting. So that's something it's a little bit jarring to me because it really sticks out. But you know, it's not, because it seems like the sky has to be affected by the magic. I'm sure that there are reasons why that's very difficult to handle and try and blend that with the atmospheric lighting, because the magic can affect the lighting of the skies, you know. And I just find design decisions like that so interesting. So thanks for watching the video. I really appreciate you watching and clicking. I hope you've enjoyed this video. And I am working on other videos, so please look forward to other videos that I've got coming up as well. And thanks again very much for watching, everyone. I recently launched my new Nintendo Switch game, that is Clash of All. It's available on the eShop. It's coming to Atari VCS and Steam very soon. You can also get a free version for the PS Vita via Homebrew, so you can check the link in the description for that. And just to be clear, the guy in the corner is actually David. He is a fantastic content creator for RPG-related stuff. I really enjoy his videos, and it's someone who's probably about as crazy as RPGs as I am, if not just a little bit more crazy about RPGs, which is insane because I'm absolutely, you know, yeah, please feel free to check out his channel. He's really great. He's got great content, so if you're interested in RPGs, go ahead and check him out. Thanks for watching, everyone. Take care of yourselves, and hopefully I can have some more cool trailer analysis videos up soon. I'll see ya.